So a lot has happened since my last video. I went overseas, I got my hair done, I injured my back, and I got my first ever tattoo. But today I want to talk to you about the books I read in June. I know that sounds super anticlimactic because it kind of is like, oh, I got a new tattoo, I got my hair done, and then I'm like, oh, let me talk to you about the books I read in June. But I do want to talk to you about the books I read in June. So if you watched my last video, you might have known that my boyfriend was away for the majority of a month, but right after he came back, I myself had to go away for like just a couple of days. So effectively we spent 3 weeks apart. We didn't really see each other a lot in June, so I wanted to take that time. I wanted to take the time to do some reading, so these are all the books I read in June. Now some of these are physical books while others are ebooks. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book I read in June was The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One by Amanda Lovelace. So this is her second in her Women Are Some Kind of Magic series, but from what I understand, you don't have to read both. I think there are 3 books in the series, but I don't think you have to read all of them in order to understand what's going on. So I'm going to read you the summary that came with the book. The witch, supernaturally powerful, inscrutably independent, and now indestructible. These moving, relatable poems encourage resilience and embolden women to take control of their own stories. Enemies try to judge, oppress, and marginalize her, but the witch doesn't burn in this one. So I picked up this book because it was the Goodreads Choice 2018 winner, and I wanted to get back into poetry just because. So it's the winner of the Goodreads Choice 2018. I think it won in its poetry section, so I thought that, that would be a good start to get back into poetry. But I actually didn't like the book all that much. I can see why the book became the Goodreads Choice winner, but I wouldn't say necessarily that it's very good poetry. Not that I would necessarily be qualified to say what is very good poetry, but to me, I just felt that for a poetry book that talks about empowering women and women's rights, it just wasn't as intersectional as it could have been. The issues that were brought up were very white feminism. It's very beginner friendly. Like, it's the beginner's intro to feminism. So it talks about rape, it talks about the patriarchy, it talks about body image, but I feel like all these things are, while they are issues that do appeal to women worldwide, it just came across as very white feminism, and it just wasn't as in-depth as I hoped. She did give a shout out to women of color and trans women and all that, but I just felt that because it was literally just one poem in her whole book, and it was a very long poetry book, I just felt that it was just more like lip service instead of anything substantial. It does fall under the realm of Instagram poetry, and I do think Instagram poetry gets its fair share of criticism, and for good reason, because a lot of the common Instagram poets like Ruby Kaur and Lang Leaf and Amanda Lovelace, the issues that they bring up in their poetry or the way that they write about these issues are very easy digestible, they're very short. So a lot of people who might want to read more hard-hitting poetry or even just longer poetry, this is something that definitely won't appeal to them. So I won't say that it's not good writing. All writing is valid. It's just that it just wasn't for me. And for me, what I wanted out of the poetry book was maybe more experimentation with form, more experimentation with style, even length, because all her poems were about the same length, the same style throughout. There was no twin cinema poetry, no font sonnet, nothing, not even prose poetry. It was just very straightforward, and I just wanted something a bit more substantial than that. For me, I wouldn't recommend The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, just because I feel that there are better poetry books that you could read to introduce yourself to poetry, and for intermediate readers of poetry, it's just something that wouldn't appeal to you. So for me, I just wouldn't recommend The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. I feel that it's pretty beginner friendly. So if you are a person who is trying to get into poetry, this is something that would definitely appeal to you. But if you're looking for something a bit more intermediate, then this isn't for you. So the next book I read is The Truth About Keeping Secrets by Savannah Brown. So Savannah Brown is actually another YouTuber, and the book is about this girl, Sydney, whose dad just died. So we join her at the funeral, and Sydney suspects foul play because her dad is the only psychiatrist in town. At the same time, June Copeland, the homecoming queen, is starting to try to get close to her, so it adds on to her suspicion. And yeah, so basically the book is about what happens after her dad has died. So for me, I loved The Truth About Keeping Secrets. I felt that it was such a good book, especially for a debut novel. I loved the development of the two girls' relationship, and I felt that the fast-paced scenes in this book, cause like towards the end it gets a lot more thrilling, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. But yeah, the fast-paced scenes were very well written, they were very thrilling, and yeah, I think that's something that a lot of authors struggle with. I hope, yeah, that like fast-paced scenes, thrilling scenes, especially if you haven't like experienced a life-threatening situation before, it's not easy to write about. But I felt that Savannah Brown did it very well. But I did feel like the first part of the book was a little slow-paced. Like the build-up wasn't really there to about halfway through the book or 3/4 through the book, because I remember reading it. I didn't feel like there was enough of a build-up just yet before the book really started to pick up. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone, and I think Savannah Brown is coming out with her second novel soon, and I'm really excited for that. So the third book I read in June is Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. So this book is about a girl named Penny who is moving to college, and when she moves to college she meets Sam, who is the uncle of her roommate. When I say uncle, I mean that like in Asian families, when you have someone who is an uncle but they are only like 1 to 2 years older than you, but because some of your relatives or a distant relative or something, you know, Asian families are confusing. You always have someone who's just a couple years older than you, but you have to call them by the senior title. That kind of uncle, yes, that kind of uncle. So when she meets Sam, the uncle of her roommate, and when they meet, Sam just found out that his ex is expecting his child. So they become each other's emergency contact after Penny finds Sam having a panic attack in the middle of the street, and they mostly start becoming friends and start to fall in love with each other. I don't think falling in love in a romance novel is a spoiler. So for me, I kind of feel like I am tired of romances. I'm not sure what it is. I love a good romance novel, I love a good chick lit, but like I just feel that with this book it was just so light-hearted that there was basically no plot. Like it was really very simple. I was telling my friend about this book just last night, and I really couldn't say anything past that. Oh, you know, they meet and they fall in love. That's it. That's the plot of the novel. You know how in every rom-com, in every novel, there's always some sort of conflict. Even the conflict here wasn't so strong to the point that when they did get together in the end, I wasn't like, oh, they're meant for each other. It was just kind of like, oh, cool, they got together. That's all I have in my notes. So yeah, for me, I wouldn't recommend this book. It's quite a long read, but I read it in like one night. So for me, I wouldn't recommend this book. I don't feel like the conflict was particularly strong. I don't feel like the plot line was particularly strong. I didn't even really like the characters. I didn't feel like they were very likable. So yeah, so wouldn't recommend, sorry. The next book I read is It Devours by Welcome to Night Vale, and this was an ebook that actually got really cheap because the hard copy of the book is I think $30-$40 here, but I got it for $5 on Kindle, and I was like, yeah. But yeah, so It Devours by Welcome to Night Vale is the second book by the Welcome to Night Vale company, but you don't have to read the first few. You don't have to read the first one to understand it. They are standalone books. So if you don't know what Welcome to Night Vale is, this book is definitely something that you kind of need like a preliminary understanding of the show. So basically, Welcome to Night Vale is a podcast about a weird town supposedly in the middle of the desert area in the US. And to give you context about what weird means, there are no dogs allowed in the dog park, they don't believe in mountains, and there's a city of tiny people who live under the bowling alley, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. If you go into It Devours blind, you will definitely get spoiled for Welcome to Night Vale, so I don't think you can read this without, listening to at least I would say episode 30 of the show. I think that's about where the dog part storyline comes in. So yeah, so I'll just have to, so spoiler alert here, but basically it's revealed that halfway into the show that dog park is a passageway into the desert otherworld in Welcome to Night Vale, and Carlos, the boyfriend of Cecil, who is the radio host of the show, has just come back after being stuck there for about a year. So in this book, Cecil and his team of scientists think that there's something weirder than normal going on in town because houses and places are being swallowed up. So the head scientist, well, not the head scientist, one of his scientists on his team, Nilanjana Sikda, the investigation leads to the congregation of the Smiling God and one of their very committed members, Daryl. So together they're going to find out what is going on and if the church has anything to do behind all these houses being swallowed up. So the reason I really love Welcome to Night Vale is that it's just so weird, and I feel that when it comes to this kind of thing, you really just go big or go home, and Welcome to Night Vale definitely just goes big every single time. I think it's one of the highest, I think of all the books that I'm reviewing today, it has the highest rating on Goodreads. For me, the podcast is just so rich, and it's just so rich, and there's so much lore and so much things happening in canon that the novels just add another layer, and they really let you see all these characters that don't really appear so much in the radio show. But definitely for a reader who has never heard of Welcome to Night Vale, it might be very hard to understand what's going on if you've never heard of Welcome to Night Vale or you don't have an understanding of the show. And I would say the ending is actually not what a lot of people might expect, but I'm not going to say any more than that. But definitely It Devours is a book that I will highly recommend to anyone, and Welcome to Night Vale is also a show that I'll highly recommend to anyone. Also, Welcome to Night Vale, if you want a voice actor, hit me up. I can't enunciate very well, but the last book I read in June is Love, Lies and Indomee by Nuril Basri. So basically this book is about a girl named Ratu who falls in love with the wrong guy, Hans. So she doesn't love Hans at first as they get off to a pretty rocky start in their relationship, but eventually they start to fall in love. But it all ends very abruptly when it turns out that Hans has accidentally impregnated another girl. So in revenge, Ratu gets into an arranged marriage despite still being in love with Hans, and I'm pretty sure you can see where the rest of the novel is going. I feel like the summary given at the back of the book is not very comprehensive as to what actually happens in this book. Like, it's completely different. I thought I was going into the story going to get something completely different, and then I got this I didn't really like this book because there were just way too many twists and turns. There was way too many like, oh, she's in love, she's not in love, she meets this one, she meets that guy. And it was just, the chapters are actually really, really short. They're like maybe 5-6 pages each chapter. So I just felt that there were so many twists and turns in such short chapters that it just ruined the experience for me. Similarly, I didn't find any of the characters here particularly likable. I didn't think that like the journey they went through made them better characters or better versions of themselves. Additionally, the ending felt a little cheap for me. Like, if you read this book, you'll see what I mean. The ending felt a little cheap, a little cliche. I just wouldn't recommend Love, Lies and Indomee either. So that's all the books I read in June. I'm sorry I could only recommend 2 out of 5 of them. But yeah, so if you have any suggestions for books, I don't fucking know, comment, DM me, something. I want to read more books. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I knocked my notebook off my lap.